She had everything but chose silence. There was a moment almost invisible to the world when everything changed. No headlines captured it, no cameras recorded it, no one paused long enough to notice. But from that moment on, the most famous princess in the world was no longer living the life people believed she had. She was still smiling, still waving, still appearing exactly as expected. But something inside her had shifted, quietly, permanently. To the world, she was perfection, a symbol. A dream turned real. Every step she took was watched, admired, studied. People saw her as someone who had achieved what many could only imagine: beauty, power, influence, and a place in history. She seemed untouchable, almost unreal. But perfection is often a carefully constructed illusion. And behind that illusion, there is always a cost. She understood that cost better than anyone. From the very beginning, her life was never entirely her own. Even before she became a global icon, there were expectations, subtle at first, then overwhelming. Expectations about how she should behave, how she should speak, how she should feel. Expectations that slowly replaced her freedom with responsibility. And responsibility, when magnified by the eyes of the world, becomes something much heavier. At first, she adapted. She learned quickly. She learned how to present herself, how to respond, how to maintain control in situations where control was expected but rarely possible. She became what people needed her to be, and in doing so, she earned their admiration, their fascination, their love. But admiration can be dangerous, because the more people admire you, the less they see you. They stop looking for flaws. They stop questioning the story. They accept the image as truth. And once that happens, there is no space left for reality, only for performance. And she performed perfectly. But behind that performance, something else was growing, something quiet, something unseen. A feeling that she could not fully express because there was no place for it in the life she was living. No space for doubt, no space for vulnerability, no space for truth that didn't fit the narrative, so she kept it to herself. At first, it was manageable, just a thought here, a question there. A moment of silence that lingered a little too long. But over time, those moments began to connect. They formed a pattern, a quiet realization that something about her life was not what it seemed, not to the world, and not even to herself. Because when you live long enough inside a role, you begin to lose track of who you were before it began. And that is when the silence starts to change. It is no longer just something you use to protect yourself. It becomes something that defines you. For her, silence became a language. It spoke in the way she paused before answering certain questions. In the way her smile sometimes felt just a fraction too controlled. In the way her eyes, for just a brief second, revealed something deeper than the moment allowed. Most people never noticed, and those who did never understood, because how could they? How could anyone understand what it means to live a life where every emotion must be filtered, every reaction measured, every truth carefully evaluated before it can exist in public? They saw a princess. They did not see a person trying to survive within a system that demanded perfection. As the years passed, the pressure did not fade. It intensified. Every appearance carried more weight. Every decision mattered more. Every detail was analyzed, interpreted, sometimes even distorted. The world was no longer just watching her, it was defining her. And slowly, she began to realize something that would change everything. The life she was living was no longer hers. It belonged to the people watching. It belonged to the expectations surrounding her. It belonged to an image that had grown too powerful to challenge. And once that realization settles in, there are only two choices. You either accept it completely, or you begin to distance yourself from it. But distancing yourself from a life that the entire world is invested in is not simple. It cannot be done suddenly. It cannot be done loudly. It cannot be done without consequences. So she chose a different path, a quieter one, a slower one, a path that would allow her to step away without the world fully understanding what was happening. At first, the changes were subtle, fewer appearances, slightly longer absences, moments where she seemed present but not entirely there. The world noticed, but only enough to speculate, not enough to question deeply, because the image was still intact. The story still made sense, and as long as the story makes sense, people rarely look beyond it. But behind the scenes, something much more significant was unfolding. She was beginning to reclaim something she had lost, not publicly, not dramatically, but quietly, piece by piece, moment by moment. She began to create distance, not just from the public eye, but from the version of herself that had been shaped by it. And in that distance, something unexpected happened. She started to see clearly enough to recognize the truth she had been avoiding, clearly enough to understand that the life she had been living came with a price she was no longer willing to pay, and clearly enough to make a decision that would define the rest of her story. She chose silence, not the silence people admired. Not the silence that looked like grace or composure, but a deeper silence, a deliberate silence. A silence that protected her truth by refusing to expose it to a world that would not understand it. Because sometimes speaking the truth does not set you free. Sometimes it traps you even more. It invites judgment. It invites distortion. It turns something personal into something public. And she knew that if her truth became public, it would no longer belong to her. So she kept it. She carried it. And she allowed the world to continue believing what it wanted to believe. As time passed, her presence began to change in ways that were impossible to ignore. She was still admired, still respected, still remembered as everything people believed her to be. But there was a distance now, a quiet separation between who she was and who the world thought she was, and that separation grew. Until one day, it became clear that she had stepped away, not completely, not dramatically, but enough to create a space that the world could not fully reach. That was when the questions began. Why was she less visible? Why did she seem different? Why did her life no longer follow the pattern people expected? The answers never came because she never gave them. And in that absence of answers, something powerful happened. The mystery grew. The silence deepened. And her story became something more than just a life in the public eye. It became a question that no one could fully answer, a question that still lingers, because the truth was never revealed, not because it didn't exist, but because she chose not to share it. And that choice is what makes her story unforgettable. Because in a world where everything is exposed, explained, and analyzed, choosing silence is one of the most powerful things a person can do. It leaves space for interpretation. It protects what matters. It keeps something real in a world that constantly tries to define and control reality. And maybe that was her final act of control, not over the world, but over her own story. Because in the end, she decided what would be known and what would remain hidden. She decided what the world could see and what it could never fully understand. And that is why her story still resonates, not because of what was shown, but because of what was never revealed. Because somewhere within that silence, there was a truth that shaped everything, a truth that changed her, a truth that followed her until the very end, and a truth that perhaps was never meant to be discovered. So the world continues to wonder, continues to question, continues to search for answers that may never come. And maybe that is exactly how she wanted it, not as a figure defined by explanation, but as a story defined by mystery, a presence remembered not for what was said, but for what was left unsaid. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are not the ones that are told. They are the ones that remain just out of reach, just beyond understanding, hidden in silence.